Welcome to today's advisory roundtable. My name is Peter Linderoth. I'm here with partners. I won't list them all. I promised everyone I wouldn't go over my 5 minutes. But I'm here with partners on the Coastal Watershed Network from Citizens Campaign for the Environment, Save the Sound, and the Nature Conservancy. Familiar faces to many of you, but if not, you're going to get to know us in various parts of this webinar. So today we're going to be talking about successful sound collaborations, and it's a little bit of a twist on what we typically talk about. I'll get into that momentarily. But here's a great picture of a collaboration. This is Cornell, Mike from Cornell Cooperative. They partner with all kinds of municipalities, but they also partner with seagulls on their unified water study, water quality monitoring. I have endless pictures of seagulls on their skiff, giving, just watching over them, making sure they're on top of things. So A++ for Cornell. So I'll be talking a little bit about the welcome and background, today's topic, why we picked it, why we feel, it's relevant to today in this day and age, and then agenda and outcomes. So I'll be going over the agenda and what we're going to be doing. So a quick reminder on the Coastal Watershed Network. Many of you have heard of us before. Obviously, you're here, but some of you might be new. It's a network of over 580 municipalities, NGOs, members from 580 municipalities, non-government organizations, agencies, research groups, academics, individuals. This network is all about connecting all these groups, right? Sometimes we say stakeholders, whatever it may be, but it's a network that brings us all together. It's sound-wide, from the Eastern Reach of Connecticut, and oftentimes people from Rhode Island even join us into New York City through Westchester, New York City, and then out on the island all the way to Eastern Suffolk County. We have been holding multiple events. Hopefully you've been to some of the other ones. And then we also highlight projects. Some of our focus, not a lot, is just showing projects that we feel could work in other places, getting information to people. It's all part of this network as well. And so today's topic is non-government organization, municipal partnerships. This image is from Sunken Meadow State Park. And as cool as the image is and how amazing all the ins and outs of what was done here in terms of green infrastructure, our real focus of today is how the two groups got together to make this project happen. So you'll be hearing from the partners that worked on this. They're not going to tell you, hey, the rain gardens are filtering this volume of stormwater, and impervious pavement is so much better, or better to replace with our porous pavement here, and we reduce this much, and all the technical nuances. They're going to talk more about what brought the two groups together and how the funding was put in place, and then kind of that's the handoff. We're not going to get too much into the weeds on the actual projects. It's the specifics of the collaboration being the key word for today. So the agenda, and this is a really bulleted down agenda from what you've all seen, I believe. I'm doing all right on time on the welcome and background. We're going to have a set of presentations that are on the collaborations. Like I said, I'll work up from the bottom up just because that's the order I suppose you'll hear it from the top down. Anyways, we're going to do Northport Rain Gardens with Maureen Murphy from Citizens Campaign for the Environment. And Don, I'm sorry if I got your last name incorrect here, Tesoriero. I could almost guarantee I didn't get that right, excuse me. But Don T from the Village of Northport. Then we'll be looking at a project that was assessing stormwater infrastructure with Sierra Patrick from the town of Groton and Tim Clark from the Nature Conservancy. And starting us up, actually, will be green infrastructure at Sunken Meadows Park with Lance Miller from New York State Parks, excuse me, and Katie Friedman from Save the Sound. So each one of them will talk for about 8 to 10 minutes. We'll have a little bit of time for questions. And then we're going to go into breakout groups. You'll have a facilitator in your group. We have some set questions, and just to help the discussion get started, we want to get some feedback that we can then aggregate and send back out to the network in full. And then you'll hear a little bit at 1:10 with a wrap up and upcoming Coastal Watershed Network offerings for this year, including one that's coming up fairly soon in July. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Lance and Katie for our first presentation.
Thanks, Peter. I'll share my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for the introduction, Peter. I'm just starting my timer. So I am Katie Friedman. I am the New York Ecological Restoration Program Manager at Save the Sound. So as Peter mentioned, we are a regional environmental nonprofit. We work across the Long Island Sound watershed in both New York and Connecticut. And my team focuses on coastal marsh restoration, river restoration, green infrastructure. And this project is a really good example of one that brings in multiple components. And
Hi.
welcome to introduce Lance.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lance Miller. I'm a registered landscape architect. I work for the Long Island Capital District for the Long Island region. I help oversee capital projects throughout Long Island, Nassau, Suffolk County, and all the state parks, including like Jones Beach, Robert Moses, Sunken Meadow, out east parks as well. So yeah, I'm excited to discuss this project with you.
Great. So here's an aerial image of the site that we're talking about. Again, this is Sunken Meadow State Park in Smithtown. And I'll be sharing, Save the Sound's perspective, and Lance will be jumping in with New York State Parks as well. So Save the Sound identified this location as one in which there is an experience of stormwater runoff from this 17-acre parking lot and an opportunity for marsh restoration. So this fringe of marsh here in this photo has a lot of invasive Phragmites, which was a great opportunity to both improve water quality from the stormwater in the parking lot and enhance the marsh habitat. And I'll let Lance explain what New York Parks' interests were.
Yeah, so on the left, you can see like 4 sections of the parking lot. The two on the left is considered field 2, and the field on the right is field 3. Field 2, I'm sorry, it's field 1. Field 2 had been closed for a number of years due to disrepair and the asphalt crumbling. So it became a big investment to bring that field back to life. And working with Save the Sound, we actually went back to when Sandy blew out the dam. I didn't know if you were going to be talking about that later or not, Katie, but that's kind of what brought us together, I believe, was there was a dam that restricted the Sunken Meadow Creek from tidal flows, and Sandy wiped that out, and then the partnership pretty much started with allowing that channel to stay open and allowing tidal flows to come into the muds.
Makes sense. Yeah, and something that we had talked about before too is that because this parking lot was in such disrepair, being able to redo that parking lot and adding green infrastructure was a really win-win for both parks and Save the Sound. So here's an after aerial imagery. So you can see that this parking lot was totally transformed. We have green infrastructure, capturing that stormwater and filtering it through bioretention areas and constructed wetlands. And there's marsh restoration that you can see towards the bottom. And like Lance alluded to, there was a really big critical moment in this project process where a berm that existed blew out from Hurricane Sandy. But even before that, Save the Sound had initially secured some funding for design in this area. And then once the berm blew out, there was a lot more funding made available through the federal government. So that is really, as Lance described, the kickstart of this project. It was through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Hurricane Sandy Recovery and Resiliency Grant. And as a nonprofit, Save the Sound was able to administer that grant. So we held the grant. We were in charge of all of the grant reporting and logistics. And then Lance, if you want to speak to the New York State Parks funding contributions too, that this is a partnership there as well.
Sure. Yeah, like I mentioned, getting that field reopened was a priority for the region here. So we were able to secure matching capital funds to be able to execute this project. And we really like partnerships because being able to get funding matches from other sources allowed projects to move forward. This would not have happened without this partnership. I'll put it that way. So that's how we were able to secure the funds, just because based on the need and the fact that we got a good partnership for matching funds through grants.
Thanks, Lance. And New York State Parks also was able to contribute in-kind match with their staff time, and that's always helpful with our grant reporting and administration.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in terms of staffing, so Save the Sound's ecological restoration team was involved, so the scientists and the engineers, and then we're also able to have our communication staff, really blast out updates on the projects and let folks know in the region what was happening at this site. And then of course we have dedicated grant staff who are able to really take on a bulk of that grant administrative work, which can be a burden. And then there are several New York State Park staff involved, which Lance can describe.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So capital staff, operations staff, stewardship, right?
Yep. Yeah. So I was on the capital side, and then there were some staff that work at Sunken Meadow that is, largely in charge of maintaining everything. And then they have the stewardship group who go around and help with invasive species removal and so forth. So it's really a nice collaborative approach with all staff.
Definitely. And we heard from some of Lance's coworkers about particularly maintenance, and a lot of these projects require not just maintenance right after construction, but really long-term maintenance. And so they were able to create a no-mow zone, which is really unique versus your typical, lawn care. And that was definitely one of the lessons learned was the need for long-term maintenance. So we
to go off of that, like if something that state parks is really like comfortable doing is mowing grass, and introducing them a no mow was like a foreign concept, but it just so happened to align with another state initiative to reduce the amount of fuel we consumed, and one of that was over mowing too many lawns. So they actually started implementing something region-wide, but this was one of the first places to do it. So it was nice how that worked together to be able to make that cultural change for operations staff.
Yeah, another kind of barrier that can come up and some benefit to having this partnership between the state and the nonprofit is that the state is held to the lowest bid. And so that meant that in this case, they had a contractor who was not experienced in the technical green infrastructure installation. So Save the Sound was able to hire a consultant to ensure that it was installed properly by the state parks contractor. And we talked again about state parks maintenance. We were also able as a nonprofit to work with a consultant to develop maintenance guidance documents so that the whole project wasn't just mowed, as Lance just explained. Yeah. And so that many lessons learned, these partnerships can leverage multiple funding sources. We got federal, got state, we have in-kind staff time. We can, as a nonprofit, offer a lot of flexibility with contracting. And there's a big impetus for proper maintenance in the long term. And also public engagement. I know Save the Sound and Parks are both able to work with volunteers throughout this process. So if you have any other lessons learned, Lance, that we haven't covered, please feel free to chime in.
No, I thought you really caught it really well. Like the long-term maintenance was a challenge. Like I said, they were used to just mowing grass, so it became a learning curve for them and how to maintain these. And but we're getting there, and it's really improved. It has very good feedback from the public, especially a part of the parking lot became additional picnic area, which was something that they were running out of space on. So yeah, it was just a successful project that we're proud of.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Lance. That was great. It was fun to kick us off. We could take, let's say, one question. And then Katie and Lance, if you're up for it, if you could drop your emails in the chat, people could always follow up. We're also going to be in breakout groups, so there'll be opportunities to talk with both Katie and Lance. Any questions for them? No. I could maybe a comment more than a question. Katie and Lance, and Katie knows this, Lance, I think you do too. Save the Sound issues a beach report, and it grades the beach water quality, and Sunken Meadow also has a great beaches. I think it has an east and west. And after this project was put in place and developed, we saw an improved grade in the Sunken Meadow beach grades, which was really fun. We highlighted that at a previous Coastal Watershed Network meeting, but I just want to emphasize it again. It goes to show that projects like these, like we all talk about them, theoretically they should help. I mean, that's an example where we saw direct benefits to public health at the swimming beach on site. Thank you. All right, next up, you're just moving us along. We're going to be looking at a stormwater infrastructure project, City of Groton. So we have Sierra Patrick and Tim Clark from the Nature Conservancy kicking us off.
Great, thank you. Let's see if I go to presenter mode. Does everybody see my screen? See a nod? Okay, great. Nice to meet you all. I'm Timothy Clark. I am the Resilient Southeastern Connecticut Program Director with the Nature Conservancy in Connecticut. And I am joined by Sierra Patrick, who I will let introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Sierra Patrick. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the City of Groton, tasked with leading the community through our resiliency planning and implementation work.
Great. So just give a quick overview. So we'll talk about the team background and kind of the organization of our team. We'll talk about some of the recent work that the Nature Conservancy has been doing alongside the City of Groton, and then we'll look to really what this project is about, which is this Long Island Sound Study Futures Fund proposal, and where we are today. So very boring, but always important is to see an org chart. So I, of course, as I mentioned, work for the Nature Conservancy. We were the primary applicant for this grant proposal, but I think all along we see ourselves as kind of a client rep working on behalf of the City of Groton and the residents within the city. And so there is the fun activity of managing consultants, managing grants, and everything that comes with it. We see ourselves as kind of taking out all of that busy work from the city's docket, them still being able to kind of oversee the project without all of those dreaded tasks. Sierra, do you want to add anything?
I would just add that everything that Tim just explained has been instrumental for the city to take a project like this that has actually been brought up multiple times or highlighted that it actually needs to move forward, but we just never had the capacity to do that. So this collaboration with the Nature Conservancy has been taking us to a point where we've been able to actually make progress on this. So yes, just to reiterate that point.
So I'll just give a little background on the kind of relationship between the City of Groton and the Nature Conservancy. It of course extends further back than 2019, but I think where we are today kind of looks back to some of the work that was done as part of this regional framework for coastal resilience. I believe this certainly predates my time. It may predate Sierra's time even. But this was a document that really looked at resilience projects throughout southeastern Connecticut and what we could be doing to improve community resilience. There were a few projects that kind of came to the forefront, including the Washington Park Lake George stormwater retrofit. This was a project that kind of came out of the document. It was identified with it. Here are some kind of conceptual overviews of what that looks like. And that concept level design was produced by the Nature Conservancy. But then, let's see, I might have a delay on my... So this project was funded. So we then kind of handed everything that we knew over to the City of Groton and to the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District, who applied for an EPA Clean Water Act Section 319 grant. So that is a project that is now being advanced. This project was funded to the tune of $320,000 for full project design and installation. This is a critical community park, and good to see it moving forward. But it didn't just stop there. And I think when you talk about the relationship that we've had with the City of Groton, it's one that is kind of, there's a lot of back and forth, so we can identify a project like this, but then it can come up again in something like the City of Groton Community Resilience Plan, which the city developed and released in May 2022. And so I'll let Sierra just give a little bit of context on that document and kind of what the purpose was and where it's led us today.
So the purpose of this document was to provide the city of Groton an opportunity to review our vulnerabilities. We did a complete vulnerability assessment of the community, and then started to identify objectives of how we were actually going to address resiliency moving forward. We came up with about 7 objectives and various different action items within those, but some of our key objectives were to identify storm water and mitigation and improvements, or to address urban heat islands. And so within different communities within the city of Groton, we were starting to make strategic plans of figuring out what we needed to do to address those solutions. And that kind of is what led to us looking at our 5 corners area and really starting to understand or come to grips with the realities of what was happening there and how we as a community can partner with other organizations to really start to make an impact there.
Yeah, and I think that community resilience plan really got us to our Futures Fund proposal that we submitted last year. Our kind of first involvement, as far as my involvement with the city of Groton, was participating in the workshop series that were being led to produce that community resilience plan. So this was back in 2022, and we literally got to just kind of get around tables together, look at what some of those projects were, talk about what some of the vulnerabilities are, and really figure out what were the community priorities. These are those zones that Sierra was describing as far as being able to break down the city into smaller kind of bite-sized pieces and really understand the vulnerabilities across those assessment zones. If it's red, it's vulnerable. If it's green, it's not so vulnerable. And as you can see here, the 5 corners really became evident as being one of the most vulnerable assessment zones in the city. And so I think this perfectly captures our relationship with the city of Groton, which is like, we keep going back and forth, right? So like, we'll do something, then the city of Groton will do something, and then we just look at how we can build off of that work. In design, there's the idea of the palimpsest. You're always building on top of other things. You're not starting from scratch. And I think that that's really what we see our role at TNC being. There's a clear reason why stormwater has risen to the top here, right? I mean, these images are crazy, and yet these are not atypical. When it rains, this is what the 5 Corners neighborhood looks like. It is heavily inundated. And so as Sierra alluded to, there were some really clear action items that were identified within this community resilience plan that were focused on stormwater. But a lot of those action items were entirely dependent on a stormwater runoff study being conducted. And so we had a series of conversations and basically said, what can TNC do that will best enable you to pursue those implementation action items? And so we went ahead and submitted this Futures Fund proposal. Let's see if I can get it to advance. So we submitted this Futures Fund proposal, basically requesting a sizable amount of money that would result in design and basically getting all the way up through design. And so we're going to conduct a stormwater study. We'll be developing a stormwater plan with primarily GSI recommendations, but also some green-gray hybrid solutions. And throughout that entire process, we're going to be conducting a planting while planning approach. The City of Groton hosts an annual City Day. We've got a great picture from last year's City Day where we worked with the city to do a native plant giveaway. There have been efforts by other organizations to plant pollinator pathways. And so the city came to us and said, can we kind of start thinking about this planting while planning process at an earlier stage, even though we haven't learned about the Futures Fund proposal award yet? And we said yes. So we donated a number of plants that could be given away to just community members who wanted to plant something in their yard. And I think that is ultimately what we see as kind of being part of our relationship, is that it's not just about TNC coming in and doing this project, being able to say like, hey, look at this great project we did, but like, really, how do we meaningfully give back to people throughout the year? And I think that this diagram, again, albeit boring, is incredibly important. TNC does not see ourselves as being the leads on this project. We are working on behalf of the city of Groton and its residents. We have a long-standing commitment to the city. And we'll just continue to work on behalf of them. And I think that that's kind of the best role we can play at this point, is to take a little bit of work off of Sierra's plate, but still be able to realize the many different action items that were identified throughout that community resilience plan. And so as far as where this project is going, we have now selected a consultant. We are moving forward, and we look forward to wrapping up this whole effort in August of next year. But that won't be the end of our collaboration. We're going to be working together to identify an implementation plan and continue to see this through until we have a less vulnerable Five Corners neighborhood, and hopefully one that's a little bit drier when it rains. So thank you all, appreciate it. And if there are any questions, happy to take them.
Great, thanks, Timothy. Thanks, Sierra. We have time for a question or two.
I think, Peter, there was a question in the chat for the last speakers too, so I might want to.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Total cost of the project.
Yeah, total cost of the project, and that was
Yeah,
related.
folks.
That was
Yeah.
a previous speaker, yeah.
Yes, I just replied in the chat about 4 million for design and construction.
4
Thank you.
million. Nice. And so in terms of, okay, so for this one, in terms of Groton TNC, I mean, you mentioned there's some work being looked at outside of this project already. What are you building on it? Is that what you said? Or do you have some other concepts in mind?
Yeah, we're always looking for more projects. So who knows? There might be projects in addition to this, but I think we're already looking forward to when this design phase wraps up, August of next year. We're already thinking about how we can be securing implementation funding. So
yeah,
we always see this as just like a part of the puzzle, and this is just the part we're focusing on for the time being.
Nice.
And if I could just add also from the city side, there's this underlining kind of training and ongoing conversation that has to build within our staff about how we actually apply this work to our planning and our projects. And Tim does a great job at integrating that discussion into this process as we move forward. So that's another underlying piece that kind of helps keep the conversation progressing.
Great. All right. Thank you again, Sierra, Tim. Last but certainly not least, we've got Don. I see you there, Don. I see it's Don T. I'm sorry I got your last name wrong. Don T, if you don't mind me calling you that for now, from the village of Northport.
Tesserero. Yep,
Tesserero, thank you. That was much easier in what I was making of it. Thank you, Don. Don Tesserero from the village of Northport, and Maureen Murphy from Citizens Campaign for the Environment.
Great, thanks so much for having us. So Maureen Murphy with Citizens Campaign for the Environment, and I'm joined here with the village of Northport. Don, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be on and support the group and Citizens Campaign for the Environment.
Great, thanks. So we have collaborated now on 2 projects involving implementing green infrastructure in the village of Northport. And I think the first thing for everyone here is identifying the problem. So in the village of Northport, polluted stormwater was a problem. The whole village is located on a hill, and at the bottom of the hill is the harbor. So anything that, runs off the pavement during all types of these wet weather storms is going to end up in the harbor in the Long Island Sound. They also have a huge problem with flooding. This picture was taken, I know it's a little grainy, but this is, a typical Main Street after the rain, where actually the rainwaters are gushing down the hill right into the harbor there. Also important for any project is to identify the partners that you're going to work with. So here, this was the Northport Yacht Club members. They reached out to us and they said, we want to do a rain garden in the village of Northport, and we want help. So that began the collaboration with the village, with the Yacht Club, and with the members of the community. And the village of Northport has been really proactive. In 2016, they conducted a sub-watershed assessment. And in that assessment, they listed 18 different green infrastructure projects within the village. So they already had a plan. They knew that they wanted to invest in green infrastructure. They knew where the projects they wanted to do were located. And that was really the baseline for this partnership. And then when the Northport Yacht Club reached out and said, we want to build this rain garden, the rain garden was already part of this assessment. It was already listed. So we worked off that assessment. And then, of course, involving the community. Here's just like a few stats on designing the rain garden. And this was the first project that we worked on. And this was in front of the Northport Yacht Club. And you'll see here, there was, yacht club members, the mayor came out to help with planting, the community members came out to help with planting. So really involving the community in any project moving forward helps make it a successful project. And these are some of the different groups too that we worked with. The Northport Harbor Water Quality Protection Committee, the Northport Native Garden Initiative, on top of the village, as well as the Yacht Club. And keeping the community involved. So not only did we get community members out to help with planting, but then we also had community meetings. So the community meetings, and we had one for the project that was already finished and one for this upcoming new project that we're doing, where we invited the community in and we showed them the plans for the rain garden. And we showed them the list of plantings and we showed them, what it would look like. And then asking them for their feedback. And you might say, well, what kind of feedback would they have? It's just a rain garden. It's just plants. But the community has a lot of feedback. They were very, very engaged. They wanted to know what type of plants were happening. One particular question was, how tall will the trees get that you plant? Because it was the second project is so close to the harbor, they were concerned about their view. Right now, they have a great view from their window of the water. So they wanted to make sure that the plantings didn't grow too tall to impede that view. So they do have great input to put in. They want to know about these projects. They want to know how they'll look. The community members were excited about the projects. Some of them were very familiar with the work the village had done in identifying those projects. And we actually had members saying, I'm so excited this is actually happening. So like I said, we did 2 projects that we collaborated with the village. The first was the Northport Yacht Club. And this is just before installation. And this project, this is after installation, but this project was so successful. And that's what encouraged the village and Citizens Campaign for the Environment to seek funding for more projects in the village. Like I said, they did the assessment. They had identified 18 different projects that they wanted to move forward on. So this was a successful project. And we said, all right, let's go for another project. Let's put in another grant application. And both of them were funded through the Long Island Sound Futures Fund. Signage, educational signage is so important, especially, these are very visible sites. They're on village property. So even when we did the signage, we reached out for community input and had the community's feedback of what they wanted to see on the sign and what they felt was most important. And honestly, the sign took a lot longer than we anticipated because there was a lot of feedback and we were able to incorporate that and go through several redrafts before we came to the final. Okay, so building on our success. This is part of our second round of projects. Like I said, the first was the Northport Yacht Club right in front of there. And then this is the second projects that we just received funding for. We're moving forward on. Like I said, you can see here is a clear view of the harbor there. You can see that very dilapidated boardwalk. And what's happening is this is the bottom of another hill in the village. So the water is running down this hill and it's running underneath that boardwalk and it's actually eroding the beach at the end of that boardwalk and going straight into the sound. So that patch of green grass will all be planted in native plantings in a rain garden, and the boardwalk will be redone in this project. We also included a second rain garden in the second grant application. So this is the second site that will be kind of reconfigured and replanted. And it's again in the middle of this very big hill. So the idea is to capture that water before it gets to the bottom and right into the harbor there. But I really put this slide in because don't give up. Both of our grant projects were not funded the first time around. So even, you know, working with the Northport Yacht Club, we put in the grant application and it was rejected. And we looked at the feedback from the funders and, you know, what needed to be strengthened, what needed to be changed. We put that feedback, we revised the grant, and then we put it in for the second round, and it was funded the second time. And even though we had such a strong foundation, we had a strong working relationship with the village, we put in the grant for the 2 new projects, and it was, you know, rejected at first. And then we revised it and based on the feedback, and we put it in again. So really don't give up. Even when you don't receive funding the first time, that doesn't mean it's a bad project. Just revising that applications, making a few tweaks, making it more competitive, then it was funded the second time. So I don't have any after pictures of these 2 projects because they are still in the works. But I'm going to hand it over to Don for last comments on, you know, working with a not-for-profit and the benefits it is to the village.
All right, so good afternoon. It's been incredibly valuable for the village of Northport to work with Citizens Campaign for the Environment and a consultant with regard to our grant application process. We have a relatively small village, about 7,300 individuals. And as Maureen noted, a serious stormwater problem that just hadn't been addressed for a number of years here in the village. CCE has helped us on a number of fronts in looking for grant funding to, from an environmental perspective, address with some of our stormwater issues and have it filter naturally in our subwatersheds. But in addition, being a small municipality, and they help us through the whole process. So it's not only it's the process of making the grant application, and then as Maureen noted, in this particular scenario, the first ones weren't successful. The follow-up, making sure that the project was resubmitted, getting it funded. And then what was really important to the village as well was we do our annual MS4 reporting, and their education, the public education and outreach portion of the project was incredibly important to the village of Northport. So the Citizens Campaign for the Environment and Maureen scheduled public meetings, held public sessions, worked on materials for outreach to the community, both before scheduling, during, and after the event, for the planting aspect of it, for the design aspects of it, and then for public awareness and communication in the community, even with our local, say, school system and such. So at a number of levels, they operate as a consultant to the village of Northport and offer tremendous value in moving these projects forward. So the project that was mentioned in front of the Northport Yacht Club, it was very, very successful. And now we're scheduled to begin these other 2 projects this summer. And it's been an incredibly rewarding experience, both for the village of Northport and our residents. And we thank them for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen and Don. Really good advice there on, you know, I know from our perspective, it's Save the Sound. Once we get a grant done and the budgeting and the writing and such, if it doesn't go through, you better believe we're going to repackage it and use it because the concept's on paper and spreadsheet and wherever you're saving it. So good advice. Any other questions? or any questions? You got some comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I just
I
cut
have
someone off?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Swarna, and I'm calling from Clean Ocean Action. I'm sorry, I'm driving, and I just had this was a great presentation. We work in similar realms here, and I can I word like the multi-part question, or do you want me to go one after the other?
No, go ahead. You can ask it now.
Okay. So the first thing is when you said you were looking at the yacht club and the green infrastructure in terms of rain garden, was it just for flow attenuation, or were you looking at any other specific pollutant reduction? That was,
Cameras.
how are we looking at the terms of de-weeding, the community engagement?
I'm sorry,
So-
you're breaking up a little bit,
You
but
broke up-
attenuation and a community engagement, I heard a little bit.
Well, let's just answer the first part, Peter, because she's
Yeah.
breaking up.
Yeah.
So the first part of the question, I can say that, with the rain gardens, we're capturing that first flush. So we are helping with flooding. We have been told by the yacht club members and the community members that it does help significantly with flooding, but then also removing bacteria, nitrogen, phosphorus from that first inch of rainfall. It's able to filter those pollutants out, and then the water makes its way into the harbor.
Mhm.
And what was the second one on community engagement?
The second one was in terms of maintenance, because when you talk about native species, there's always going to be the weeds and the seasonal, removal of those, and kind of taking care of the vegetation. So that's one area that sometimes, needs a little more attention.
Yep.
That we've seen in some of the communities here. And so what measures have you taken to, address those?
So two parts. One thing that I should have mentioned is we have another partner in this partnership, and that is the consultant. We work with Rusty from Nelson Pope and Voorhees, and he is a rain garden guru. He knows everything there is to know about rain gardens and rain garden plantings. And he has really helped CCE, he's helped the village, and he's helped the community, and especially when it comes to maintenance and, really guiding the community on what needs to be done and guiding the village on what steps need to be taken. And the village has been such a great partner. When we first did the plantings, we needed to get water because we were going through a season of drought. Usually you don't have to water rain gardens, but the plantings were new. We were in a season of drought. We didn't want things to die off. The village was right there. The yacht club was right there. So again, having the strong partnership, I think that I talked about in the beginning, is so critical for moving forward in the process and then moving forward in the maintenance process, because not only does the village want the project to succeed, but the community is now also invested in the project and they want it to succeed.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. And maintenance is a big topic on these things. I think we should get into the breakout groups. Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Are you wrapping us up, Peter? Or is Maureen?
Maureen is.
Okay, well, great. I just want to say, thank you to everyone participating. I know in my breakout group, we had some really great discussions. So we want to thank you for your time and for your feedback and helping us, make this Zoom a successful Zoom, and ultimately helping us to help you guys be successful in getting projects and, forming different collaborations. So I think we formed a new collaboration in my breakout group. So hopefully others did too. But I did want to just let everyone know to be on the lookout. You'll get another email from us as a follow-up. And we already have our next event planned for Plastic Free July. It'll be July 16th at 12:30. So mark your calendars. And we were fortunate enough to get the Redzilla project to come to that Zoom presentation. And they have just finished a groundbreaking study in the Long Island Sound on microplastic hotspots. So eat your lunch early because afterwards you might not want to. But stay tuned for that information that will be coming in your inbox. And again, thank you everybody for your time.